It was another bitter winter evening at the Emerald Pavilion, the city's most prestigious and luxurious restaurant in downtown Providence, Rhode Island. A magnificent gold-leafed chandelier hung from the high ceiling, casting a warm, inviting glow throughout the expansive dining room. The gentle murmur of sophisticated conversation, the delicate clinking of fine crystal glasses, and the soft, enchanting notes of a live piano filled the space with an air of refined elegance. The Emerald Pavilion was the exclusive haven where Providence's elite gathered, a place where wealth, power, and influence converged under one impeccably designed roof. Everything appeared perfect: the ambience, the sumptuous cuisine, and the impeccably dressed patrons who mingled like a well-rehearsed symphony. Yet for Clara Monroe, a devoted waitress whose gentle spirit belied her turbulent past, everything had changed. Clara, now 26 years old, had been working at the Emerald Pavilion for nearly 3 years. She had grown up on the unforgiving streets of Providence after losing both of her parents at a tender age. Life had taught her to be resilient. After years of struggle and bouts of homelessness, she had fought her way out of despair and earned a job at this luxurious establishment. The road had been long and arduous, and Clara knew that every shift at the Emerald Pavilion was a precious gift. Despite her ascent from the depths of hardship, she had never forgotten the sting of hunger, the bitter cold, or the soul-crushing feeling of being invisible. It was precisely because she knew what it was like to be discarded and ignored that she could never turn a blind eye to anyone in need. Clara was renowned throughout the restaurant for her innate kindness and her willingness to go above and beyond for every guest. She was the one who handled difficult customers with extra care and made certain that every person who walked through the heavy oak doors felt seen and valued. Every shift she carried with her the indelible scars and memories of her past, reminders of the nights when she had lain awake, shivering from hunger and cold, and these recollections fueled her determination to treat everyone with genuine compassion. For Clara, her job was not merely an occupation, it was a calling born of necessity and tempered by an unyielding desire to make a difference in a world that had once shown her little mercy. That particular evening, as Clara finished clearing a table filled with impeccably dressed patrons laughing over delicate champagne flutes, and the gentle piano continued its melancholy tune, she turned to return to the bustling kitchen, when something out of the ordinary caught her eye. Through the massive, pristine glass windows that overlooked the snow-dusted streets of Providence, she noticed an unfamiliar figure standing alone. It was a woman, small, fragile, and bundled in ragged clothing, shivering as the icy wind whipped around her. The woman clutched a worn coat tightly around her shoulders, yet it did little to stave off the bitter cold. Her shoes were tattered, barely holding together, and although her face was partially obscured by layers of a faded scarf, the deep lines of exhaustion and despair were unmistakable in her eyes. Clara's attention was immediately captured by the woman. It wasn't just the ragged appearance that struck her, but something more, an unplaceable familiarity in the way the woman stood, an echo of a long-forgotten past. In that fleeting moment, memories of Clara's own mother, an endlessly kind soul who had always offered comfort and hope, flooded her heart. Her mother had nurtured her when life had been unrelentingly harsh, and though she had passed away too soon, her legacy of warmth and selfless love remained etched in Clara's very being. Now, as Clara gazed out at this solitary figure, it was as though the ghost of her mother had reached out from the mists of memory, presenting her with an unexpected second chance to extend the kindness she had once received. For a moment, Clara stood frozen at the window, her eyes fixed on the woman in the cold. She hesitated, weighing the consequences. Was it right to approach someone so visibly vulnerable in the midst of a luxury restaurant? Yet the pull in her heart was irresistible. She believed that kindness was a right for everyone, regardless of their status or fortune. Resolutely, Clara excused herself from her table and made her way toward the entrance. Her heart pounded as she stepped outside into the biting wind, which slapped her cheeks with a stark reminder of the cold reality beyond the warm confines of the Emerald Pavilion. No sooner had she opened the door than a gust of wind hit her, and the woman, startled, looked up. Clara offered a warm smile, her eyes soft with sincerity, and said gently, "Excuse me, ma'am, are you all right? Can I help you?" The woman's eyes, brimming with confusion and a trace of fear, flickered uncertainly as she took in Clara's kind face. After a moment of silence, the woman's voice trembled as she replied, I haven't eaten all day. I'm sorry to trouble you, but I just need something to eat. Anything, really. I don't want to cause any trouble." Clara's heart broke at those words. She remembered too well the pangs of hunger and the emptiness that had once gnawed at her soul. Without a second thought, she reached out and gently touched the woman's arm. "You're not causing any trouble," she murmured softly. "You deserve to be fed, just like everyone else. Please, come with me." Though the woman hesitated briefly, the kindness in Clara's eyes slowly dissolved her apprehension, and the stranger, whose name she would later learn was Elena Ramirez, followed her inside, even if unsure of what might happen next. Clara guided Elena to a quiet booth in a secluded corner of the opulent dining room. The rich burgundy drapes and soft golden lighting created a cocoon of privacy amid the luxurious surroundings, though curious glances from passing staff and guests did not go unnoticed. Undeterred by the murmurs, Clara hurried to the bustling kitchen and explained the situation to the chefs. "I need to assemble something for a guest in need," she said urgently. Although it was late and there was no time to prepare a freshly cooked meal from scratch, the chefs, moved by Clara's quiet determination, rushed to gather leftovers. A bowl of steaming soup, a slice of freshly baked bread, and a modest salad. It wasn't the extravagant 5-course meal that regular patrons adored, but it was a meal that promised to offer comfort and nourishment. Clara returned to the booth with the carefully arranged food. Her hands trembled slightly with a mixture of resolve and empathy as she set the bowl before Eleanor. "Here you go," she said softly. "You deserve this meal." Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes as she stared at the simple repast, a moment of solace in a long night of deprivation. "Thank you so much," she managed to whisper. Clara shook her head gently, her voice steady despite the emotions churning within her. "No thanks are necessary. Everyone deserves a little kindness now and then. Please, just eat and take care of yourself." As Elena began to eat, Clara felt a quiet satisfaction settle over her, a subtle reassurance that her act of kindness was not in vain. In that moment, the memory of every hardship, every cold, empty night of her youth, mingled with the gentle warmth of helping another. Yet, unbeknownst to Clara, her compassionate deed was unfolding beneath the watchful gaze of someone far more powerful than she could imagine. Seated in a shadowed corner of the Emerald Pavilion was a man whose piercing eyes had observed every detail of the evening's events. Dressed in a casual yet impeccably tailored suit, exuding an air of quiet authority, he had been watching from the moment Clara had escorted the shivering woman inside. His name was Alexander Reed, a 60-year-old billionaire renowned for his immense wealth and his deep commitment to philanthropic causes. Alexander had come to dine alone that night, his mind preoccupied with the matters of his empire, when he noticed a subtle disruption in the otherwise impeccable order of the Emerald Pavilion. As he watched Clara guide the disheartened Elena to a secluded booth, a feeling of admiration began to stir within him, a recognition of rare, unselfish courage in a world dominated by superficial appearances. Alexander's expression remained calm, though his inner thoughts were tumultuous. He believed in the transformative power of compassion, even in the most unlikely settings, and as he observed the exchange between Clara and Elena, he felt a deep sense of resolve that the moment deserved to be recognized. Just as the scene continued to unfold with quiet dignity, the soft clatter of silverware, the murmur of refined conversation, an imperious figure made his presence known. Mr. Stanton, a stern manager at the Emerald Pavilion who prided himself on maintaining the restaurant's impeccable image, was a man of 45 years who had ruled his domain with an iron fist. His perfectly tailored suit and severe expression bespoke a man who valued exclusivity above all else. Sensing that something was amiss, Mr. Stanton strode purposefully from his office toward the booth where Elena sat. His eyes, cold and unyielding, swept over the scene with barely concealed contempt. "What is going on here?" he demanded sharply, his tone leaving no room for disagreement. Before Clara could respond, Mr. Stanton's voice rang out over the gentle din. "This is not a soup kitchen. I will not allow homeless patrons to be seen dining in a venue such as this." His words, delivered with a sneer, carried an unmistakable tone of derision, as though any disruption of the established order was a personal affront to his authority. Clara's heart pounded, as Mr. Stanton's harsh declaration reverberated throughout the dining room. She knew all too well the sting of being judged for her past and for daring to extend kindness to someone society had cast aside. "I'm sorry, sir," she began, her voice soft yet unwavering, "but I was only trying to help her." Mr. Stanton's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Help her? You're undermining the standards of this establishment. If you continue this behavior, you will be held accountable." His tone was icy, his words a veiled threat of immediate dismissal. Before Clara could gather her thoughts or defend her actions, the tension in the Emerald Pavilion escalated. Eleanor, who had been quietly savoring the modest meal, looked around in bewilderment and fear as the hostile remarks from Mr. Stanton echoed in the luxurious space. The other staff members, Clara and Darren, who had long subscribed to the unspoken rules of favoritism, watched silently, their faces a mix of discomfort and quiet satisfaction. The refined murmur of conversation from the elite diners was replaced by a heavy, suffocating silence as all eyes fixed on Clara and the vulnerable Elena. At that critical moment, when it seemed that Clara's compassionate act would cost her dearly, a deep, measured voice resonated from a nearby table. "Excuse me, Mr. Stanton," Alexander Reed said, rising gracefully from his seat with an air of calm authority. His tone was soft, yet carried an undeniable force as he continued, "I believe you owe this woman an apology." Mr. Stanton whirled around, his eyes flashing with indignation. "And who are you to lecture me on the proper conduct of this establishment?" he retorted sharply. Alexander's gaze remained steady and unyielding. "I am Alexander Reed, and I represent a new paradigm, one where compassion is not a liability but the very essence of true refinement. You may run this restaurant as you see fit, but you are gravely mistaken if you think that a person in need does not deserve a warm meal, nor that an act of genuine kindness should be punished." A profound silence fell over the room, the weight of Alexander's words hanging in the air like a challenge to the old order. Mr. Stanton's face flushed a deep shade of red as he opened his mouth to argue, but before he could continue, Alexander pressed on in a calm yet commanding tone. "This is not merely about preserving an image. It is about honoring the humanity that lies at the heart of every establishment, luxurious or otherwise. I have been dining here for many years, and tonight I witnessed an act of pure, unadulterated compassion." His voice grew even firmer as he declared, "I insist that you retract your words and offer an apology to this woman and to the dedicated waitress who risked her livelihood to ensure that no one was left hungry." The silence in the dining room deepened, and Mr. Stanton's eyes darted around, realizing that his authority was slipping. His voice, now tinged with barely concealed fury, finally broke through. "You are dismissed," he snapped, pointing an accusing finger at Clara. "Your actions have jeopardized the reputation of the Emerald Pavilion." The words struck Clara like a thunderclap, and for a brief, heart-wrenching moment, she felt the weight of her world collapse. But before despair could take hold, Alexander Reed stepped forward again. "No, this decision is not irrevocable," he said evenly. "I intend to speak with the owner and ensure that the Emerald Pavilion embodies not only luxury, but also humanity." Mr. Stanton recoiled, his anger simmering as he sputtered, "Who are you to overrule me?" Alexander's eyes narrowed, and with the resolute calm of a man who had witnessed too much injustice, he replied, "I am prepared to purchase this restaurant if necessary, to restore its soul, and to champion the values of compassion and respect." At that moment, a murmur of astonishment swept through the dining room. The owner, a dignified woman by the name of Cameron Doyle, aged 50, who had been watching the unfolding events from behind the reception desk, stepped forward. "Sir, what exactly are you proposing?" she asked, her voice a blend of shock and cautious curiosity. Alexander's reply was decisive. "I propose to buy the Emerald Pavilion. Under my ownership, this restaurant will transform into a sanctuary where everyone, regardless of their station, receives the dignity they deserve. And Clara, your courage and integrity have earned you a place here. You will be the new manager." Cameron paused, visibly torn between preserving the legacy of her establishment and embracing this bold new future. But the prospect of not only preserving her investment but also aligning with a vision of true, humane service was irresistible. "Very well," she finally said, her voice wavering only slightly. "I accept your offer." With that, Cameron signed the necessary documents, and that very night, ownership of the Emerald Pavilion was transferred to Alexander Reed. Overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events, Clara could scarcely believe what was unfolding before her eyes. Moments earlier, she had faced the threat of losing everything: her job, her sense of purpose. And now, thanks to Alexander's intervention, not only was she reinstated, but she was also promoted to manager, with an initial investment of $5 million earmarked for her future and the restaurant's transformation. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked up at Alexander, whose steady gaze conveyed both respect and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of relief and wonder. "I never imagined that doing what I believed in would lead to this." Alexander offered her a gentle smile. "Your act of compassion has done more than save a life tonight. It has redefined what this establishment can be. It is now a place where humanity takes precedence over appearances." In the days that followed, the Emerald Pavilion underwent a profound metamorphosis. Under Clara's visionary management, the restaurant shifted from a cold temple of opulence to a vibrant community hub where every guest was treated with respect and kindness. She restructured staffing policies to ensure equitable treatment for all employees, irrespective of their backgrounds, and instituted training sessions emphasizing empathy and courtesy. Gradually, the once toxic culture of favoritism and elitism began to dissolve. Patrons who had once been met with dismissive indifference now found themselves embraced by warm smiles and genuine hospitality. Word of the transformation spread quickly throughout Providence, amplified by a viral social media campaign that celebrated the spirit of compassion and the hashtag #EmeraldHeart. News outlets began to take notice. A prominent local blogger tweeted, "The Emerald Pavilion is no longer just about luxury, it's about real people and real kindness. Kudos to Clara Monroe for reminding us that integrity matters." This message was shared thousands of times, and soon, the story of Clara's courageous stand became a symbol of hope for service workers everywhere, an inspiring reminder that doing the right thing could indeed change one's destiny. Within a month, Clara received an unexpected call from Cameron Doyle herself. "Clara," Cameron said in a measured tone, "I wanted to personally congratulate you on the transformation you've initiated here. Your leadership has breathed new life into the Emerald Pavilion, and I am proud to have you at the helm." The words resonated deeply with Clara, whose journey from a struggling waitress in East Providence to the manager of one of the city's most celebrated restaurants was now being heralded as a triumph of character over adversity. Yet, as the nights grew longer and the crisp winter air deepened, not everyone was pleased with the changes. Mr. Stanton, whose authority had been usurped, seethed with anger. He could not reconcile the notion that a simple act of kindness had toppled the rigid hierarchy he had so painstakingly enforced. In a tense confrontation one frigid evening, he stormed into the dining room, his face twisted with fury. "Clara, what is the meaning of this?" he roared, his voice echoing against the marble floors. "This establishment is meant for our elite clientele, not as a refuge for the undeserving." His words, laced with contempt, fell like cold daggers upon the assembled staff and patrons. Clara stood tall, her eyes steady even as her heart pounded with apprehension. "Sir, kindness is not reserved for a select few," she replied softly but firmly. "Every person who walks through these doors deserves to be treated with respect and dignity. This restaurant is not merely a showcase of wealth, it is a community, and it must reflect that truth." The tension in the room was palpable, every eye fixed on the unfolding confrontation. But before Mr. Stanton could further vent his anger, Alexander Reed intervened once more. "Mr. Stanton," he said in a calm yet resolute tone, "your time here is over. You have failed to uphold the values that make this establishment truly great." His words, delivered with the authority of a man accustomed to making decisive moves, sent a ripple of shock through the room. Mr. Stanton's face reddened with fury and he sputtered, "You cannot just—" But Alexander cut him off. "I will ensure that the Emerald Pavilion is run with heart and integrity. And Clara, you have shown more compassion in one evening than most have in a lifetime. You deserve this role, and I intend to stand by that decision." The diners, previously hushed in anticipation, erupted in quiet applause. The air seemed to shift, and the oppressive atmosphere gave way to hope. In the days that followed, Alexander and Cameron worked closely with Clara to implement sweeping changes at the Emerald Pavilion. The restaurant began to serve not only exquisite dishes, but also to host community events that celebrated diversity and unity. Clara's new policies ensured that every employee was given the same opportunities, regardless of their background. Training sessions focused on customer service and mutual respect became the norm, and slowly the cold, exclusionary practices of the past were replaced by a culture of empathy and generosity. News of the transformation spread beyond Providence. Local television segments, newspaper features and social media posts under hashtags like Emerald Heart and Kindness is Power extolled the virtues of the new era at the Emerald Pavilion. People from all walks of life celebrated Clara's rise as a testament to the power of integrity, and many young service workers found in her story the inspiration to stand up for what was right, no matter the cost. One wintry evening, as snowflakes drifted silently over the city and the neon lights of Providence shimmered like jewels against the dark sky, Clara closed the doors of the Emerald Pavilion after a long, challenging day. Standing outside, she gazed up at the softly glowing sign, her thoughts turning to the journey that had brought her here. Every hardship, every moment of loneliness and pain had led her to this moment of transformation and hope. Her phone buzzed, and a message from her younger brother, Marco, now a determined student at a local university, filled her with pride. "Sis, I'm so proud of you. You've shown that true success isn't measured by money, but by the kindness we extend to others." With tears of gratitude welling in her eyes, Clara replied with a promise to continue fighting for a fairer, more compassionate world. Meanwhile, Alexander Reed continued to champion a new model of leadership. In press conferences held in sleek, modern auditoriums, he spoke passionately about the importance of placing humanity above profit. "True success," he declared, "is not in the balance of your bank account, but in the strength of your compassion and the lives you transform." His words resonated deeply with local business leaders and community activists alike, inspiring a wave of initiatives aimed at fostering ethical practices across industries. As spring approached and cherry blossoms began to paint the sidewalks of Providence in delicate hues of pink, the Emerald Pavilion's legacy grew even stronger. Clara organized weekly community evenings, where local artists, musicians, and poets were invited to share their stories and talents. These gatherings transformed the restaurant into a vibrant hub of creativity and connection, a place where every guest, whether a distinguished patron or someone in need, was welcomed with open arms and treated with genuine respect. At one particularly memorable community celebration, held on a crisp spring afternoon, the restaurant's transformation was on full display. Families, business people, and local residents gathered in the softly lit dining room, sharing laughter and heartfelt conversations over plates of delicious food. Clara took the stage with a gentle smile and addressed the crowd. "Today we celebrate more than fine dining. We celebrate the power of kindness to change our lives and our community. Every act of compassion, no matter how small, creates ripples that can transform our world." Her words were met with a standing ovation, a resounding affirmation that the new values at the Emerald Pavilion had touched the hearts of all who were present. As the months turned to years, the Emerald Pavilion not only flourished as a restaurant but also became a symbol of ethical leadership and community spirit. Cameron Doyle and Alexander Reed expanded their philanthropic initiatives, launching scholarship programs, vocational training courses, and mentorship networks aimed at empowering underprivileged youth. Clara, now firmly established as a visionary leader, continued to inspire through her tireless work and unwavering commitment to fairness. In interviews on national television and at business forums, she recounted her journey from the gritty streets of Providence to the halls of the Emerald Pavilion. "I stand here today not as a survivor of hardship, but as someone who has chosen to use my experience to bring about positive change," she would say, her voice soft yet filled with resolve. Every person, no matter their circumstances, deserves to be treated with dignity, and every act of kindness has the power to transform a life. Even Marco, now thriving academically and fueled by the inspiration he drew from his sister's accomplishments, became a beacon of hope for other young people facing adversity. His achievements were a constant reminder that the sacrifices made by Clara were not in vain, and his frequent messages of encouragement to her served as a testament to the strength of their bond. One autumn evening, as golden leaves danced along the historic streets of Providence and the city prepared for winter, Clara stood at the entrance of the Emerald Pavilion. The soft glow of the restaurant's neon sign mingled with the crisp evening air, and she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had transformed not only her life, but the lives of so many others. Her phone buzzed with a message from Cameron Doyle. "Clara, your leadership has redefined what success means. The Emerald Pavilion is now a beacon of hope and kindness. Congratulations on this incredible journey." Overwhelmed with emotion, Clara typed a brief reply, her heart swelling with gratitude and determination. In the days and weeks that followed, the Emerald Pavilion continued to set an example for ethical hospitality. The restaurant's reviews soared. Its story became a case study in business schools, and social media buzzed with posts celebrating the new era of compassion. Alexander Reed's initiatives, along with Cameron Doyle's unwavering support, led to a transformation that reached far beyond the walls of the restaurant. New policies were implemented across the city's dining establishments, and a cultural shift began to take root in the local business community. A shift that valued empathy over exclusivity, and recognized that the true measure of success was the positive impact one had on the community. One particularly memorable winter night, as the gentle sound of snow falling mingled with the quiet hum of the city, a grand charity gala was held at a beautifully renovated historic theater in downtown Providence. The elegant venue, adorned with tasteful floral arrangements and soft candlelight, set the stage for a celebration of ethical leadership and community spirit. Alexander Reed took to the stage with a commanding yet compassionate presence. "Tonight we honor not only the success of a business but the transformative power of kindness," he proclaimed, his voice echoing through the room. "Let our actions remind us that true wealth is measured not in dollars, but in the lives we touch and the hope we inspire." The audience erupted in applause, and as the gala drew to a close, guests mingled with a sense of renewed purpose and unity. After the gala, as the lights dimmed and the night grew quiet, Clara walked alone through the softly lit streets of Providence, her thoughts a tapestry of memories, hardships, and triumphs. She recalled the long, cold nights when she had almost lost hope, and how a single act of compassion had lit the way toward a brighter future. "This is only the beginning," she whispered to herself, a promise that every small act of kindness could indeed change the world. In the following years, the Emerald Pavilion's transformation became an enduring legend, a story told in boardrooms, classrooms, and community centers from Providence to New York. Documentaries chronicled Clara's journey, and social media campaigns under hashtags like Emerald Heart and Kindness is Power resonated with people across the nation. Young entrepreneurs and community activists found inspiration in the idea that even in the most exclusive circles, compassion could triumph over prejudice and indifference. At a prestigious roundtable on ethical leadership held one bright spring afternoon in a modern conference center, Clara stood before a diverse audience of business leaders, educators, and social advocates. With a steady, passionate voice, she recounted her experience at the Emerald Pavilion. "Every day, I strive to remind myself that our true worth is defined not by the luxuries we enjoy, but by the compassion we extend to others," she said. "I believe that every act of kindness, however small, has the power to transform lives, and that when we choose to stand together, we can build a better, more inclusive future." Her words were met with rapt attention and thunderous applause, and many left the session inspired to reimagine success in terms of empathy and ethical responsibility. Meanwhile, Marco, inspired by his sister's story and buoyed by his own academic successes, began to share his experiences with his peers. He spoke passionately about overcoming adversity and the importance of resilience, encouraging others to believe in the transformative power of hard work and kindness. His message, delivered with youthful determination, echoed the values that had become the foundation of the Emerald Pavilion's new era. As summer turned to autumn, the Emerald Pavilion continued to flourish as a symbol of hope and integrity. Community nights featuring local talent, open mic events where customers shared their personal stories, and mentorship programs for aspiring hospitality workers became a regular part of the restaurant's schedule. Each event, each act of genuine care, reinforced the idea that the restaurant was not just a venue for luxury dining, but a sanctuary where every individual was welcomed and valued. One particularly crisp autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast a warm golden glow over the city, Clara stood at the entrance of the Emerald Pavilion, watching families, couples, and business people stream through the doors with smiles and animated conversation. The familiar hum of activity filled her with a profound sense of accomplishment. She recalled the long journey that had brought her from the harsh streets of East Providence to this moment, a journey defined by struggle, sacrifice, and an unwavering belief in the power of compassion. Her phone buzzed with a message from Marco. "Sis, you inspire me every day. Thank you for showing us that kindness always matters." Overwhelmed by gratitude, Claire replied with a promise to continue nurturing the spirit of the Emerald Pavilion and to fight for a world where every person, regardless of their background, was treated with dignity. In the following months, as word of the restaurant's transformation spread beyond Providence, local media and national news outlets began to spotlight the remarkable changes at the Emerald Pavilion. Editorials praised the innovative leadership of Clara Monroe and the bold vision of Alexander Reed and Cameron Doyle, while social media exploded with personal testimonials under hashtags such as Emerald Heart and Regal Rebirth. Business schools invited Clara to speak about her journey, and community centers used her story as a case study in ethical leadership. The message was clear. No matter where one started, every person had the power to change the world with a single act of kindness. One winter day, as icy winds danced through the historic streets of Providence and the city's skyline shimmered in the soft light of dusk, Clara received an invitation to attend a community forum on social responsibility. Surrounded by influential local figures, entrepreneurs, educators, and social advocates, she took the stage and spoke from the heart. "I once worked in a world where I was invisible, where every day was a struggle for survival," she said, her voice both tender and determined. "But I learned that every act of compassion, every moment when you stand up for what is right, can create ripples that change lives. I stand here today as proof that kindness has the power to transform even the darkest of times." The crowd responded with resounding applause, affirming the enduring impact of her words. As time passed, the Emerald Pavilion became more than just a restaurant. It evolved into a movement, a living testament to the power of empathy and ethical leadership. Under Clara's guidance, the establishment expanded its community outreach programs, offering free meals for those in need, launching job training initiatives for underprivileged youth, and partnering with local non-profits to create safe, supportive spaces for vulnerable members of the community. Cameron Doyle and Alexander Reed, inspired by the restaurant's success, spearheaded new philanthropic ventures designed to uplift those who had been forgotten by society. One memorable evening, as a gentle snowfall blanketed Providence and the twinkling lights of the city created a magical backdrop, the Emerald Pavilion hosted its annual Legacy of Compassion Gala. The grand ballroom, now tastefully decorated with simple, elegant ornaments that emphasized warmth and humanity over ostentation, was filled with local leaders and community members, gathered to celebrate the transformative journey of the restaurant. Alexander Reed took the stage with a voice filled with quiet authority. "Tonight we honor the notion that true success lies not in the accumulation of wealth, but in the generosity of the human heart," he declared. "Let this gala be a reminder that every act of kindness creates ripples that can rebuild lives and communities." His words were met with heartfelt applause, and as the gala drew to a close, the collective spirit of hope and unity permeated the room. After the gala, as Clara walked home through the softly lit streets of Providence, she felt a deep, abiding sense of fulfillment. Every step she took was a reminder that her struggles had not been in vain, that her compassion had sparked a change that extended far beyond her own life. In the quiet of her modest apartment, surrounded by photos of her humble beginnings and mementos of her journey, Clara penned a message on her phone. "Kindness is the light that guides us through even the darkest nights." That simple truth, echoed in messages of support from strangers and friends alike, reinforced her determination to keep fighting for a world where every person was treated with dignity. In boardrooms across the city and at community centers in every neighborhood, the story of the Emerald Pavilion and Clara Monroe's courageous stand against injustice became a rallying cry. Richard Reed and Cameron Doyle continued to advocate for ethical business practices, inspiring a new generation of leaders who believed that profit and compassion could coexist. Their public speeches, replete with personal anecdotes and a vision of a kinder world, resonated with audiences from all walks of life. "We have the power to redefine success," Richard would say in interviews, "by the lives we touch and the hope we instill in our communities." As spring blossomed in Providence and cherry blossoms began to dot the sidewalks in soft pink hues, Clara received yet another invitation to speak at a prestigious forum on the future of ethical leadership. Standing before an audience of young visionaries, seasoned entrepreneurs and community advocates, she recounted her journey from the cold, harsh streets of East Providence to the grand dining room of the Emerald Pavilion. "Every challenge we face, every hardship we endure, is an opportunity to shape our future," she said, her voice imbued with a quiet strength. "I stand here today as living proof that even when the odds are stacked against you, a single act of kindness can pave the way for an entirely new chapter." The audience listened in rapt silence before erupting into a thunderous ovation that affirmed the power of her words. In the ensuing years, the Emerald Pavilion's influence continued to expand. Cameron Doyle and Alexander Reed, along with Richard Reed, launched a series of initiatives aimed at promoting inclusivity and ethical practices in the hospitality industry. Scholarships were established for underprivileged students, mentorship programs for aspiring young professionals were rolled out, and community outreach events became a regular part of the restaurant's calendar. The story of Clara's transformation from a struggling waitress to the visionary manager of one of Providence's most celebrated restaurants inspired countless people to believe in the possibility of change through compassion. One brisk autumn afternoon, as golden leaves danced along the cobblestone streets and the cool air promised the arrival of winter, Clara stood at the entrance of the Emerald Pavilion, watching as families, couples, and business people passed by with smiles and animated conversations. Her phone buzzed with a message from Marco. "Sis, you are changing the world. I'm so proud of you." Overwhelmed by gratitude, she replied with a promise to continue nurturing the spirit of kindness that had come to define the Emerald Pavilion. In that moment, as the neon sign shimmered in the fading light, Clara knew that every act of compassion, every sacrifice made along the way, had been worth it. At a grand charity dinner held in a beautifully restored historic theater in downtown Providence, Richard Reed took to the stage. "True wealth," he proclaimed, "is measured not by the assets we accumulate, but by the lives we enrich and the hope we inspire. Tonight, we celebrate the power of kindness and the transformative impact of a single, heartfelt act." The audience, composed of local leaders, philanthropists, and everyday citizens, rose to their feet in applause, their cheers a resounding declaration that compassion was the most valuable currency of all. Later that night, as Clara sat alone in her modest apartment reflecting on the journey that had led her to this moment, she felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The memories of hardship, the struggles that had once defined her, had been transformed into a legacy of hope and resilience. "This is only the beginning," she whispered to herself as she gazed out at the starlit Providence skyline. "Every act of kindness creates ripples that can change the world." In time, the Emerald Pavilion became a symbol of a new era, a time when empathy and ethical leadership were prized above all else. Clara's story was shared in boardrooms, classrooms, and community centers across the nation, inspiring people from all walks of life to redefine success not by wealth or status, but by the impact they had on others. And as the seasons changed, as the gentle hum of life continued in Providence, the legacy of that cold winter evening and the transformative power of a kind heart lived on as a timeless reminder that, even in the harshest of worlds, love and compassion can light the way to a brighter future.